I think the first story I have to tell you is that I live currently in Beverly Hills, California, and attend a lot of charity organizations. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was at a charity event, and Howie Mandel was there. And I said, Howie, I'm going to use deal or no deal in my remarks at a prayer breakfast in Atlanta soon. And he said, well, what's the prize? And I said, eternal life. Went right over his head. Well, good morning. My name is Bud Paxson, and I'm an entrepreneur, an addicted entrepreneur. I'm trying to break the habit, and they told me if I attend this meeting, it might help. Looks like we got a lot of other people here addicted too. You know, at my stage in life, I can look back and see the events that shaped my life as an entrepreneur. At about 9 or 10, I asked my dad for $5. And he said, well, go get a paper route like your buddy Chad next door. So I went next door and I asked Chad, well, what do you do with delivering the newspaper? He said, well, he got up every morning at 5:30, folded the papers, put them in the sack in the basket of his bicycle, then rode to every house, got off the bike, and put the paper inside the screen door. Now, this was Rochester, New York, lots of snow and rain. On the Sundays, he had to make 2 trips because the paper was so thick. And then Wednesday night, at dinner time, he went out to collect. When I asked him how much he made, he said $5 a week. No deal. That was too much work. So I went back to my dad and I said, okay, I still want the $5. And he said, well, look in the newspaper for a part-time job. And I did. And I came across an ad placed by the University of Rochester Medical Center who wanted to buy hamsters for $1 each. Deal. I built some cages out of orange crates, and within a few weeks, I was making $15 to $20 a week. I'd go to the grocery store once a week, gather up all the vegetable throwaways, toss them in the cages every morning. Once a week, clean the cages. That was it. A lot more fun, a lot more money. It was a good deal. Now, my friend Chad was left-handed, and when you went out of his house 3 blocks to the left, you came to a funeral parlor where he got a part-time job a few years later. And Chad said, come to work with me. They need more help. So I went. The day I went, 2 bodies came in. No deal. I ran out of there. I'm not kidding. And by the way, Chad is now one of the largest funeral directors in that part of the state. Well, I'm right-handed, and 3 blocks to the right was a radio station. And that's where my career in radio started. Getting coffee for the DJs, sweeping up, taking out the trash. Soon I was on the air doing a show on Saturday morning called Kitty Go Round. I won't bore you with the details because it was not much of a show, but during high school and college, I worked as a DJ. And in 1956, after college graduation, I bought a minority interest in a radio station where I was working. And now, 50 years later, I'm still a licensee of the Federal Communications Commission. There were a lot of entrepreneurial sideshows along the way. I say sideshows because, for the most part, they were not good deals. An example, in 1958, I bought a strip of land, a very narrow piece of land, along a major highway between Rochester, New York, and Newark. And we built a gas station there. We angled the pumps 2 by 2. We called it El Rancho Gaseteria. And we invited people to pump their own gas. We were a little early on that one. Another one was a gas station with an automatic car wash combined. There was the drive-through barn called Quick Stop. You drive through, stop and get milk, beer, bread, and other staples. There was the soft ice cream stand franchise, Dutch Boy car washes, Swiss House of Fondue, a restaurant, and Heritage Art Galleries. Actually, there have been 40 businesses that I've started. If I was honest, I would say there were 13 losers. 25 made enough money to feed the family and cover the losses of the other 13. None of which would make you rich, so I closed them or sold them. The song is correct. You got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. People ask me, well, what's your secret of success? And the only one I have is persistent. And during each of these side ventures, I'd always owned a radio station. Well, in the early 80s, I'd moved to Clearwater, Florida, and I owned an AM and an FM station in that market. The FM was doing all right, but the AM was struggling because of the growing popularity of FM. I had sold an appliance dealer a little over $1,000 worth of advertising on the AM, and when he wouldn't pay, I went to collect. He said it didn't work and he didn't want to pay. I said, well, that's not the way it works. After haggling a long time, he agreed to give me 112 rival electric can openers. In lieu of cash. Well, because of my kids, I was driving a van at that time, and I loaded the boxes of can openers into the van, took them back to the station, unloaded them, went home, and went to bed. The next morning I got up and I realized that I had to make payroll for the AM and that I had left my savings account passbook at the station, so I had to go there and get it so I could make payroll. And when I drove there and got out and got in there and I looked at those can openers, we had a morning talk show going on. I invited myself on the air as a guest with one box containing one of those rival can openers. I read the sales pitch on the box. The price was right on the box, $14.95. I told our listeners they could buy one for $9.75, but they had to pick it up before noon at the radio station with cash or check. We didn't take credit cards. We had no machinery for that. And to reserve one, they had to call in and give us their name and address and phone number. In 15 minutes, we had the name, address, and phone number of more than 112 buyers. What a deal. They came, they paid, I met payroll. Necessity was the mother of invention. And that's a good deal. And from that humble beginning, we grew first on radio, then to local cable, then to satellite. Then we started buying major market television stations called the Home Shopping Network. We were the first nonstop, 24-hour-a-day shopping channel on TV. Now it's 1985. We're a public company. I've cashed out a bit. Good deal. I'm wealthy by most standards, and we're growing by incredible strides. During 1986, I'm away from home about 250 days, out buying TV stations across the U.S. and traveling to over 100 countries, 100 cities around the world, buying product for home shopping's growing needs. Christmas was coming, so I shipped gifts from all over the world. I shipped them home, and I arrived back home on December the 21st. On Christmas morning, you could hardly get into the living room. We opened gifts from about 9:30 until after 12 noon. And when we were done, my wife said to me, I want to talk to you out on the patio. Well, when I went outside, she was smoking, something I had never seen her do before. It was a warm, sunny Florida Christmas day. I wasn't ready for what she said. When my wife spoke, her words were like a bolt of lightning out of a blue sky. She said she was in love with another man and was leaving me that day. Within the hour, she was gone. I was a broken man. All I could do was cry hour after hour. I was absolutely and completely emotionally bankrupt because I had lost my wife and I wasn't close to my kids. And when she walked out, I realized that everything I had devoted my life to could not make me happy. My life had become meaningless. My kids, who were in their late teens and mid-20s, stayed with me and tried to comfort me. I had planned a New Year's vacation in Las Vegas for the whole family. Not to gamble, but to see the shows and celebrate New Year's. The kids insisted we go. They wanted to get reacquainted with Dad. They said they loved me, and we needed to be together. We went, along with my umpteenth box of Kleenex. New Year's Eve, we were at Caesar's Palace in the celebrity showroom. Buddy Hackett was on stage. The kids and everyone else were laughing, but tears were running down my face. Shortly after midnight, I excused myself and went to my suite. It was the loneliest place in the world. I felt sorry for myself. I was 52 and alone. I sat on the couch, moved to the bed, and I fretted. Then I moved to the chair. I was a wreck. I had everything, but I had nothing. About 4 a.m., I remembered that there was probably a Gideon Bible in that room. I found it. I began to read. When I was growing up, this is how I went to church with my mother every Sunday. And by 14, I was 6'6", and she couldn't reach up here anymore. And I stopped going. But at about 5 a.m., New Year's morning, 1987, while reading the Gideon Bible, I realized that I was separated from God by my sins. I read the sinner's prayer and asked Jesus to come into my life. That was the ultimate deal. And what a deal. I cannot express to you in words. I cannot convey the meaning of what happened in that hotel room. I can only tell you that Jesus came. He comforted me. He poured out his love on me and gave me hope. The experience was more than I can possibly express to you this morning. It was supernatural. After a while, I fell asleep for the first time since Christmas. When we went home, I became a Christian fanatic. I studied the Bible for hours every day. I attended church Bible studies, spent hours on the phone with Christian scholars and ministers, literally any Christian who would talk to me. At first, I am totally sure that I was expecting God to get my wife back. Month after month, I worked on my faith, and it grew. I really wanted to graduate from God University. One day I realized God simply wanted a personal relationship with me. He wasn't planning to get my wife back. So I started the divorce, and soon it was finalized. I was ready to date again. Wow, you're 50 plus. And what do you do? Well, I asked friends, I networked. I went to singles things at church, and they are just things. But I was a man with a plan. Now, you're going to admit it was a little nutty, but I wanted to remarry, and I was committed to an idea. On each new date, I would go to dinner with the lady, and usually a Christian couple I knew. And sometime during the dinner, out of the blue, I would turn to the date and startle her with this question: so what do you think of Jesus Christ? "37 women in a row." They mumbled, they stuttered, and answered wrong. No deal. Well, now it's almost Christmas '89, and Home Shopping was having a party for our senior execs. And by this time, our employees numbered almost 6,000. The exec ranks with wives numbered in the hundreds. The night of the party, I met the party planner responsible for the affair. She was a lot younger than I, but I asked if I could call her for a dinner date after the first of the year. She said, sure, why not? Right after New Year's, I made that call and the date, and with my usual Christian couple in tow, we headed to the clubhouse of the local dog track. She had never been, and I hadn't been in years. In the summer between the third and the fourth race, I turned and said, so what do you think of Jesus Christ? She looked at me quizzically and replied, well, what do you want to know? I've known him all my life. What are you doing Friday night? There's a side note on that date, and I'll never forget it. She picked 12 out of the 13 winners that night. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that it was a sign from God, but it certainly impressed me. A year later, we were married. It's almost 18 years ago. And the marriage where both are committed Christians is something truly from God. I cannot tell you how many times God has smoothed out the edges and brought joy and a high level of happiness to this union. Probably the best lesson God taught me about a happy marriage was 4 simple words. I'm going to pass them on to you now. I suggest you memorize them. Happy wife, happy life. Got it? Happy wife, happy life. Well, with my faith and a new wife and God's love, it became very obvious that I was unequally yoked to my partner at the Home Shopping Network. He couldn't utter a sentence without the F word. No deal. So in 1990, I left and sold my HSN stock and started Paxson Communications. So many times during these years, I had to turn to God and thank him for our success. Because I knew it wasn't me, it wasn't Lady Luck, but it was God's hand in leading the company. Today, 16 years later, with NBC as a partner, I pretty much cashed out. Their designee is running the network. They've changed the name to Ion Media Networks. I'm still the licensee of the 60 full-power television stations that we own in America, 42 of which are the top 50 markets, and we have one right here in Atlanta, WPXA. Along the way, in the early 90s, I also started the Worship TV Network. It's a nonprofit, 24/7 worship service on TV dedicated to worshiping God, now available in 34 countries. I'm different now that I'm a Christian. That's the cornerstone of Christianity. Changed lives. When I'm asked, how can I believe in something I cannot see? I answer, I see changed lives. My life was changed by Jesus Christ, and I know hundreds, thousands of lives that he has changed. Happier, assured, not perfect by any means. There's ups and downs in life. I'm human. I make mistakes. I still sin. But when the downs come and the sins come, you just get closer to God, and he gets closer to you. And soon again, things are normal and right. Changed lives are the cornerstone of Jesus Christ's work. Faith is believing in something you cannot see. And for me, this is easy. I believe on the basis of what Christ has done in my life and the lives of so many others. And I have to make a point. Last night at a dinner with the committee that leads you in this incredible prayer breakfast, I had the joy of seeing so many changed lives. Let me tell you of my favorite story about a changed life. This is the real deal. His name was Newton, John Newton. He was born in 1725. He had some early religious instruction from his mother. She died, however, when he was a child. When he was 11 years old, he went to sea as a cabin boy. By 1748, he had became the captain of a ship that plied the English slave trade. They had recently loaded the ship with slaves chained together in the hold, and on the homeward trip to England, they hit a violent storm. John lay on his cabin floor and wrote in his journal, "Surely we shall die before dawn. The ship is doomed. All is lost." And to calm themselves, the slaves in the hold were humming a tune. And John heard the melody. He lay prostrate on his cabin floor and begged God for mercy. God answered. The waves subsided and they were spared. When he reached port in England, he abandoned the slave trade and studied for the ministry. In 1780, Newton became the rector of St. Mary Wool Church in London. His congregation grew and grew and included a man named William Wilberforce, who he influenced greatly. And it was William Wilberforce who led the campaign to outlaw slavery in England. And you'll be able to see that movie called Amazing Grace, starring the life of Mr. Wilberforce in the spring. John Newton, taking the melody hummed by the slaves that night during that horrible storm at sea, wrote a song that has become one of the most incredible hymns of all time, and my personal favorite. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. 'Tis grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. And yea, when this flesh and heart shall fail, and mortal life shall cease, I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace. The earth shall soon dissolve like snow, the sun forbear to shine. But God who called me here below will be forever mine. And when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. I thank you for listening to my story today. I'm now going to call Ash up to come forward and extend to you an invitation. He'll ask you to accept Christ into your heart. Let this be the first day for eternity for you. It's the real deal. It's the ultimate deal. And I pray that you'll respond with a commitment